So Stuart Varney of the Fox Business Network did a piece on freedom of speech, and of course he was incapable of viewing the issue objectively, and as you're going to see here, in many ways he flips it. He flips the arguments, and it's super misleading, so let's watch and then I'll break it down.
Now this. It is now almost impossible to debate policy in a public forum. Forget free and open debate. In the places where free speech is most vital, free speech is dead. Case in point, the prestigious law school at Georgetown University. Not quite so prestigious now. Kevin McClellan had been invited to speak about immigration. After all, he runs the Homeland Security Department. As soon as he stood up to speak, he was shouted down by an organized group of protesters. They were chanting, quote, "When immigrants are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back." Over and over and over again. 3 times McClellan tried to speak. They wouldn't let him. He walked off the stage. The packed house of immigration attorneys, lawyers, and law students were denied an exchange of views. There's no free speech for the Trump team. There's nothing new here. There's a long list of administration officials who've been run out of restaurants, accosted in the street, and denied access to any public forum. The left has been denying free speech to their opponents for a long time. It's gotten a lot worse. They can say what they like. No insult directed at Mr. Trump is considered out of bounds. No support for Mr. Trump is allowed at all. The left is free to shout down and disrupt, but they don't have the intellect or maturity to debate. Let me close with what I think is a great example of the social media mob being faced down. Here's a case of free speech and free association being supported. Gotta love it. Ellen DeGeneres sat next to Bush 43 at a football game. A photograph of the two together provoked very harsh criticism on Twitter. Ellen DeGeneres responded perfectly. She said this: just because I don't agree with someone on everything doesn't mean that I'm not going to be friends with them. Oh, we could use a lot more like that, couldn't we? And we need college administrators to take action to ensure free speech on campuses. That's where free speech is most challenged, and that's where free speech is most in need of support.
If you're going to do a segment on free speech, and you're not going to bring up the war on whistleblowers, you're not going to bring up Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, Julian Assange, you're not going to bring up the anti-BDS resolutions in multiple states, resolutions which basically try to make it so that you cannot voice support for a boycott of Israel lest you forego your entire contract that you'd have with the government. So in many cases, people's sole income. In order to get flood relief money, hurricane relief money in Houston, people had to sign a pledge that they wouldn't boycott Israel. These are real crackdowns on free speech. Crackdowns on the right to assemble peacefully in many places, which, again, those laws pop up all over the country, laws supported by the president. If you're going to talk about free speech and not bring those up, you're a charlatan. You're a con man. Because there are real legal free speech issues all around this country. There's a lot of them. And he's got nothing to say on those. And in fact, he's on the wrong side of many of those. But in instances like this, all of a sudden he cares about free speech. So let's break it down. Now, if there's going to be a speaker that comes to a college campus, should you have them speak? At some point, let them speak. Yes, they should speak. For sure, I think. But at the same time, Stu, the protesting students, that's also free speech. It is. Like, the right to protest is part of free speech. But what he's saying is, no, only the government official coming to speak has free speech, and the students don't. Now, at some point, do you need to make it so that, okay, yes, we're going to score you out. You had your 5-10 minutes to protest, and now we are going to hear from the government official. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's understandable that if you're getting protested at one of these events, after a certain amount of time, you make it so that the person does have the floor and they can speak, but understand that that is part of free speech. Part of free speech is having the annoying protest. And if it was working in the other direction, of course, Stuart Varney would love it. If there was some left-wing, bomb thrower who was going to talk, not literal bomb thrower, some left-wing firebrand going to talk at a college campus and conservative students protested that person, all of a sudden he would understand that and say, no, they have a right to protest. Why would you say they're not allowed to protest? So, of course, he flips the argument. And then also, he acts like they would never have a forum. They're a government official. They're in charge of what? The Department of Homeland Security or something like that? Of course they're going to get a forum. You can invite him on your show today and he would come on and he'd be able to talk to way more people than he would in that room. So it's just disingenuous to act like they're totally being shut down. No, they're not. No, they're not. They actually have all the power. And when you challenge power, that's the reason for free speech, is so that you can challenge people in power. And then finally, the thing about Ellen is like, really, this is the example that you go to? People weren't saying you're not allowed to see George W. Bush. People weren't saying, oh, we're against your right to free association and freedom of speech. No, what people were saying is, oh, that's a war criminal torture, and you shouldn't, launder his image and normalize him to make it seem like he's okay now. Because he's not. He's not okay now. He's still a war criminal torturer who will never face justice. So people were correct in pointing that out. But Stuart Varney is triggered by those facts. He's triggered by the fact that George W. Bush is a tortured war criminal. So instead he acts like, oh no, all the outrage is simply because they don't agree on everything and they're hanging out. That none of the outrage is about that. Everybody's got people in their family who are super conservative and don't agree with them or whatever the case may be. They're mischaracterizing the issue on purpose, muddying the waters on purpose. I saw Rave Dubin did the same thing, where Rave Dubin was talking about how, taking Ellen's side, see? The left is so intolerant of views that they disagree with. It's not about being intolerant of views you disagree with. Again, we all have people we disagree with who are friends and family. All of us. Everybody does. It's about, hey, he's a war criminal, and you're treating him like he's not a war criminal, and you're laundering his image, and it probably is because he's an American war criminal, so you think it doesn't count, and also because you hate Trump so much that let's go back to the days when everybody was serious, like when we had George W. Bush as president. There's a variety of bad reasons why it ended up like that, but that's what she did, and everybody's mischaracterizing the issue and straw-manning the people who are talking about it, and it's infuriating. And I need everybody to notice something. The only time they ever invoke these free speech arguments is when they're conveniently making a case for their own partisan politics. That's it.